It's really easy to say, well, $60. What's $60 a day? So I lost $60 on unit 102. Who cares? Okay, well, how many units do you actually manage as a regional manager? How many units does your boss manage as a VP? Well, how many units does your company manage overall? How much is your company losing on a daily basis because of your one unit? Oh, you mean your 2 units? Oh, no, you mean you run 15 properties. You're 30 or 40 units. I got a roll-up spreadsheet of the company information. That's a lot of zeros, brother. I mean, to tell you, when you start rolling things up and they go further and further, those zeros just keep getting tacked on to the end. I want to make you money, and I can't make you money if the guy that's turning the apartments is the guy that you think is, the guy just next to the groundskeeper.
You would never hear this conversation when it comes to an Uber app because it's so simple to use. There's no training videos for it. You just put in hands of any type of person that uses a smartphone, they figure out on their own. If we have to have the conversation about it depends on a user. And we are live, everybody. Super excited for this Multifamily X Masters of Maintenance podcast special. I'm going to say this episode, the two gentlemen that I have here with me, Tim and Craig, and I agree to call it the $250 million a day conversation. And we're going to explain why. Keep this number in mind, it's $250 million a day that we're looking at in savings or in maybe money that we're leaving on a table, but not doing the things the optimal way. With that being said, gentlemen, Tim, please do a quick intro of yourself.
Thank you, Adrian. Yeah, my name is Tim Turner. I'm the area maintenance manager for Avenue 5, Colorado. I manage roughly 30 sites and about 7,000 units.
Craig.
Hey guys, Craig Bartholomew. I'm director of training and inspections for NetVendor Maintenance. About 30 years in multifamily, most of that on site and working side by side and shoulder to shoulder. Switched a few years ago to the dark side. Still involved in what I love, which is multifamily maintenance. It's been my entire career and continue to work in that line.
Some argue, they're saying that this is actually the bright side.
It depends on who you are, right? I mean, I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it. So happy to join the conversation, though, and be able to be involved in the conversation with folks that are in the field and really boots on the ground. Super
excited to have you on here, both of you. I think that this is such an important conversation. And I think from outside looking in, when you say make ready, sounds like it's such a boring subject. To me, it's nothing of that nature. Tim, please share the $250 million a day number that we're talking about before going live. Explain that for the audience, just so people understand in the audience what's the magnitude of how much money we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's a big number. We discussed that just previous to this call, and that is the number that we came up with that we're losing a day in rent revenue from not having our make. So there's roughly 80 million units in the United States, roughly $60 a day rent. So it equates to a day we're losing in revenue. And that is something that we need to, as an industry, need to wrap our minds around. And how do we get further traction to even just cutting that number in half? Just make ourselves 50% better every single day, and we cut that number in half. And for me specifically, I'm fee-based managed, so that is directly affects my region's bottom line. So that is something that myself and my portfolio and my leadership are looking at very diligently, is to reduce that number and to get more heads in beds quicker, because we're getting the make readies done and streamlining those processes.
I want to add something to what you just said, Tim. We're talking about $250 million a day in a scenario to where everybody's average 95% occupied. So this only represents 5% vacancy. If we're only looking at 5% vacancy across the country for all the apartments combined, we're still losing as an industry $250 million a day, every single day. Craig, I want to go to you right now and ask you to talk a little bit about where are the areas, where are we dropping the ball?
Sure. Well, to me, the biggest ball we drop and the biggest conversation that I've had both as an operator and as a vendor on the other side, is our preparation prior to. There's too many organizations out there, too many supervisors out there, to be honest, that are doing things by the seat of their pants. Oops, there's the keys. I got to go. Let's see what we can do. Conversations between managers and maintenance supervisors where we talk about what's coming available. We know what's coming available, and we're getting into those units prior to their vacancy, so we know what we have to do. If we've got a unit that can be turned in a day, great. We just saved that part of that $250 million, right? If we've got a unit that's really bad, that's going to take a lot of work, we know how to get those things scheduled. Appliances have to be ordered, carpet has to be scheduled, those sorts of things. And if we're waiting till the last second till we get those keys to go and make those decisions, we're adding time to that turn. And if we're doing that on every unit, and we're adding to those days, we're adding to that $250 million question.
Excellent. Tim, where are we dropping the ball? Anything to add to what Craig just said?
Yeah, we're dropping the ball because, like he said, pre-walks. Pre-walks are critical to getting information, to get the orders, to get the suppliers lined up. If we're waiting until move out day, we're already behind the eight ball. We're already a week behind. So, and again, they're also not setting the suppliers up for success, because the 11th hour to order flooring or to order paint or order cleaning, you're not getting the cream of the crop supplier crew. You're getting the crew that has the guy with the two left hands and the right-handed paintbrush. And then we're wondering why the painting was not up to par. It's because we didn't set the supplier up for success. And then we compound that expense even further, because then we're having go backs. So then we're coming back after the suppliers left, or after our even on-site teams have come in, and we're having to redo jobs. We potentially are paying for things multiple times.
Gentlemen, are we lacking structure? Are we lacking like the SOPs, the rules of how this should be done? How should we execute? Craig?
I think that depends on your organization. Some organizations do a really good job of laying it out and defining it, checklists, whether they're electronic or whether they're paper, whatever they may be. I think what we're lacking is an understanding of the importance. And I say that like this. We usually say, oh, well, we bring you in, you're a groundskeeper. Then we promote you to a turn tech before we promote you to a technician that's going to run work orders, because, well, first you got to turn units before you can really start fixing things. Well, the most important job on the property is turning apartments. I mean, that's the guy that's getting that unit ready for the next person coming in. It's the objective, what we say when we teach CAMT, right? Make that apartment like new as much as possible. To me, that's not the lowest man on the totem pole that just learned how to use a screwdriver, or squeeze a tube of caulk. This is a guy that knows what it means to make a unit look like it had never been lived in it before, and can go through and check all of the mechanical operations of that apartment, so everything's operating. And so I think in a lot of cases, what we really need to do is place a little bit more importance on the guy who's actually doing the unit turns, and that's getting those units ready for those next tenants.
How do we place that, Craig? How do we do that actually in real life? How do we execute on what you just said to place that type of attention that this person deserves?
Well, I think part of that is in not making turn tech the entry level position. Maybe everybody's doing turns. Maybe your HVAC guy who's really strong in air conditioning or is a really good maintenance technician, he's doing a turn. He's doing a turn because it's important. And that guy that has a little less experience, maybe he's doing that turn with somebody, so he's gaining that experience and he's learning how to fix things along the way, or he's getting a larger skill set. But that guy is the one that needs a little bit more handholding and a little bit more mentorship on how to get that unit ready. And again, I think the importance being that if we're the more we talk about not just turning an apartment, but how important it is that we're presenting a unit to that next tenant in as like new condition as possible, that we're promoting, we're lifting up that position and what it is, as opposed to just the turn. We just got to get it ready for the next people. No, we're prepping for our next person.
Tim, how do we elevate this person that it's not looked at as, just the entry level, like only one step up from, maybe like a person in training that learns on the job? How do we elevate that person, that position?
You have to emphasize the importance, and you have to build that confidence within that associate. And once they understand the standards and the expectations, and once they typically meet those standards and expectations and they get praised for that, they tend to respond a lot better than having to go back and, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do this and you didn't do this. Okay, well, how are we telling and directing these associates and these turn techs our standards? Are we give them just a check sheet and just leaving them alone in the unit and then coming back in 2 days and then wondering why something didn't get done? There's a lack of direction. And part of that lack of direction is coming, and it's a reason, but it always comes across as an excuse, is the staffing shortage. I don't have the time. Well, we're not taking the time. Time management is also a huge part of this. Is where are we taking the time to set our associate, our turn tech, up for success, which in tune is going to make the make ready a success rather than just another. We've got to go back. We've got to go back. So it comes down to the training element of setting the expectations and walking them through. If you give a guy a bucket and a paintbrush and you say paint the unit, what are you expecting? You're not giving any direction. So the time management and taking the time and really preparing that turn tech for success is where we have to get to.
I think I'm gonna use this every single episode where we're touching on maintenance topics. Mike Cooker said to me on more than one occasion, reminded all of us, teams that don't train don't win. This comes from sports. But how true is this in any type of in any type of industry, especially property management? We're one of the industries that have the lowest number of training hours for each maintenance employee. That's if not maybe the lowest. Craig, I know that you've been very involved throughout your career in training and education. So I wanted to ask you, does this sound like something that's accurate? Like we're just not allocating enough resources, enough time for our people to train, and then how do we change that?
Oh, for sure. Well, and largely because how do you look at training? And I know we're not really supposed to. We're not. It's not really a conversation today about training. We're talking about make ready, but still, it all ties back. Is training an expense, or is in training an investment? That's the quantum shift we need, right? We need to shift from training being an expense to training being an investment. We're willing, and owners are willing to invest money in things that make them money. The responsibility from leadership on the maintenance side of our industry is to prove that training our associates to do jobs the way they're supposed to, whether that's making ready an apartment, picking up trash, running a pool, fixing an air conditioner, plunging a toilet, whatever it might be, that's an investment, not an expense. Then we start to see that change. And I think that the more that we can do that, the better things become.
Gotta spend money to make money. One thing that comes to mind, I'm gonna ask you both, get both of your takes on this is, let's say that each company has some sort of a SOP in regards to make ready. Obviously, there's gaps, right? We're seeing like in a real life, things are not always applied the way they should. So the question to you is, how do we actually get the buy-in, and not just for the maintenance team members, but from everyone in management, from regional all the way down to the groundskeeper? The reason why I included regional managers here is that I used to be in a position to do property inspections. I've done them, for over a decade. And then I would look at availability, and part of what I did as a routine is like pick the longest sitting vacants, ready and not ready. And then you always see, units that were not ready, that were sitting for 50, 60, 80 days or 100 days. And you had to like just take note of that situation, but then a regional manager, someone that oversees a site, on a daily basis. How did we get to like 80 and 100 days with a unit that's not ready? So how do we get the buy-in? Team.
I think the buy-in has to come from the leadership above the regional. and that the buy-in has to be, where not just the regional, but the VPs, the VP level are walking and paying attention to to this data. But it's tricky because you can get into a situation where it's 60, 80, 90 days out and it's made ready in whatever software you're doing, but then you do, hey, show me this unit, and then you walk it and it's not made ready. So I think that's part of the problem as well, is that, you have to have the buy-in from the top, and there's got to be some, for lack of a better term, some consequences to the not having units made ready in a timely manner. That it's not always, based on maintenance. I think maintenance sometimes can be an easy target, but I think the regional manager and the VP levels also have to have a better hand and better control of what's happening in their portfolios.
What's your take, Craig, on the subject?
I would agree. I mean, and I think comes back to where we started. It's the $250 million a day question. Do the numbers, do the math, and do it for your company. It's really easy to say, well, $60. What's $60 a day? So I lost $60 on unit 102. Who cares? Okay, well, how many units do you actually manage as a regional manager? How many units does your boss manage as a VP? Well, how many units does your company manage overall? How much is your company losing on a daily basis because of your one unit? Oh, you mean your 2 units? Oh, no, you mean you run 15 properties. You're 30 or 40 units. And you do that math. I remember the first time in a role as a leader in an organization, and I'm used to looking at budgets and those sorts of things as a maintenance supervisor. And I got a roll up spreadsheet of the company information. That's a lot of zeros, brother. I mean, to tell you, when you start rolling things up and they go further and further, those zeros just keep getting tacked on to the end. I think it's the $250 million a day question. How much are you willing to sacrifice if you don't have the employees that are capable of doing this job? If you're not organizing it, and I'm sure we're going to get there, but doing things in an organized fashion, doing things that make sense, doing things that get that unit ready as quickly as possible, utilizing your teams and the skill sets they have to get a unit where it's ready to go, it makes you money. And that's the easiest thing you can say to somebody in a leadership position. I want to make you money. I want to make you money, and I can't make you money if the guy that's turning the apartments is the guy that you think is, well, the guy just next to the groundskeeper. And by the way, not to minimize the groundskeeper role, probably one of the most important roles on the property, right? Curb appeal is the main thing that those prospects are coming to look at that unit see. That groundskeeper is equally as important as the turn guy, and as the guy fixing the air conditioner, and the supervisor making the schedule and putting it together. It's a whole concerted team effort to make this thing happen.
I would argue that the groundskeeper is probably our most important position, because if we don't have the curb appeal, the make ready doesn't matter. We're not going to get the prospect to go tour, because they're going to be like, this place looks like crap. I don't want to stay. I don't want to live in a place that doesn't worry about. If they don't worry about the curb appeal, they don't worry about the make ready standards.
Absolutely.
And now a word from Dean Fungawing, founder and CEO, Kairos.
So we look at freeze protection packages. We're looking at both shutoff valves that are rated by NFPA. I believe we're one of the only ones in the country that have this solution right now. And it is specifically designed for fire suppression systems. And then you've got not only leak detection in the fire protection package, but you also have the temperature monitoring. So you can see the ambient temperature, you can see pipe temperatures. You can then use this data to avoid having pipes bust in the middle of winter you have these cold snaps. What you're going to see in this country is that more and more of the climate, as that polar vortex pushes further south, you're going to see more and more extreme cold weather in the wintertime in Texas, in Georgia, in northern Florida. You're going to see more and more cold weather. It's going to get normal. And if you're not prepared with a solution, you're going to be surprised by this. You will have large insurance claims. You'll have residents that are going to have to get kicked out in the middle of the night when it gets really cold. This is a problem. Our system is also designed to notify your local fire department to let them know, hey, we've detected a freeze condition. We're going on fire watch, so that you're in compliance with local safety regulations. You can notify the alarm company in case you need to bypass the flow switch. All of this can be put together in a package that allows you to provide protection.
I want to give a shout out to all of you in the audience that are watching us today. I've seen several comments coming through. Please continue to type them in the comments, because we're going to take questions from the audience. I'm actually starting with the first one from Joshua. And the question is, how do you communicate the expectations you have and training also to vendors? So how do you train your vendors to be in line? We're focusing so far in a conversation about the internal, about the staffing, about the the management. But how do we do that with vendors? That's an excellent question, I believe. So, Craig, I'm going to start with you.
That's about accountability, which comes back partially on the site team or the supervisor. But the vendor's responsible to provide you with employees that can do the job to your expectations. You're setting, we talked right at the beginning about companies that have SOPs. So when you go out to bid for a cleaning contractor, you go out to bid for a painting contract, and you're gathering those prices. You should be delivering to those contractors, for lack of a better, your expectation, right? When we do capital bids, we want to put together a scope, right? So it's the same thing with a paint contract for a turn vendor. Here's my scope. This is what I expect. I expect you to take the plates down, or I expect you to tape the plates off. I expect you to tape the floor or cover the floor. Whatever those expectations might be for your organization, you're telling them what you expect. Then you are inspecting what you're expecting, right? So when your painter leaves, you should be going back behind that painter. Did they get paint on a sprinkler head? Well, then they're coming back to fix it. Did they get paint on the floor? Well, then they're coming back to clean it up. If you hold them accountable, then they will quickly learn that getting by is not what you're in the process of doing. You are holding them accountable to what you expect. If you expect your cleaner to do a certain thing and they fail on that on a regular basis, you've got to hold them to that. And it's one thing to be nice to a person and to try and help somebody out, but it's another thing to let things start to slip, because unfortunately, you know what, we're all creatures of habit, and we kind of have a tendency to be a little bit lazy. And I know you're not going to look underneath the refrigerator because you don't want to pull it out when we're done cleaning. And by the time we've been there a couple of months, I might quit pulling the refrigerator out to clean underneath it. All of a sudden, it's getting a little bit slack. So you got to inspect what you expect, but you first have to give them that expectation. So you should have a really well-developed scope that you deliver when you go out to bid for whatever piece you're contracting out, and then hold them to that.
Excellent answer. And Tim, anything to add here on creating expectations and training for your vendors?
It's trust and verify, like Craig said, expect and inspect. But I think once you have to understand some suppliers' limitations, and you have to understand some site teams' limitations. I think if you go into this with an open mind with a supplier or an on-site team, where you want to see what they're capable of without a lot of directions, because then you can verify where you need to spend your time. If you know that this unit has been pest mitigated, and they're not moving the stove, and they're not moving the dishwasher, they're not moving the refrigerator because they weren't told to do it, okay, that's a different conversation. There are things that you just do because it's the right thing to do. Some suppliers don't know because they're the letter of the line. It wasn't on my check sheet, so I didn't do it. So I think there's conversations that we have to have with suppliers of what our expectations are, and then giving them the opportunity after they're done with the unit to give them the feedback of what we saw throughout the process. A lot of this is about relationships. And everything is fixable, but it's fixable at a cost. It's part of the $250 million question. But if we set them up for failure because we're not being proactive when we're just saying, go turn this unit, but I want the refrigerator moved, I want the stove moved, I want the dishwasher, whatever it is, they're not going to do it unless they're asked. So you have to be very diligent on your direction on every specific unit, and it's not just a one size fits all thing. You've got to be flexible. Suppliers will do anything we ask them to do, but we have to make sure that we're asking them the question.
We have a great question from the audience, and I want to stay with you, Tim, first. What's the turn process look like for an in-house process versus outsourcing it to a third-party vendor?
Oh, wow. That is a very great question, and it's a very hot topic right now for everybody, I think, because right now when we're supplying out our make-readies, I have leverage. I can withhold a payment of a supplier because it's not done yet. I cannot do that with an on-site team. So my expectations are higher because I'm expecting that supplier to be solely dedicated to that unit 100% for the next 5 days. My on-site team, here in Colorado, we're going to have snow. So they're going to have snow removal and ice mitigation. We're going to have frozen pipes. We're going to be dealing with that. They're going to get pulled from that unit more so than the supplier should. So my expectations are higher for the supplier. But on the on-site team, I'm expecting them to provide the supplier with all the directions. So it goes hand in hand. It's not just supplying it out and making a vendor go do it. It's how they were delivered that information and how we've policed it throughout the process. And when issues happen, how do we get past that? There's two sides to every story. Now, I always want to believe that my site teams are giving the supplier the 100% of the information, and the supplier is always wrong. But then I do digging and I find out, oh no, that we weren't told to paint this unit, or no, we weren't told to remove that fridge, things of that nature. So, it's a very fine line of how we communicate that to everybody on both sides.
I want to go next to the dynamic between community manager and service manager. To me, these are the two entities that are co-managing a real estate asset, a $60, $70 million piece of real estate. What are some things that you would like to see or we should see in this relationship, the service manager and community manager? How should they work together, and what accountability parts should be out there? How do they hold themselves accountable, and then how do they create a successful turn process to where everything goes as planned, or like the way the SOPs are basically outlining?
Well, the key is communication. If you're not meeting and talking, and if you're not discussing, then you're behind. If you're not communicating and discussing with the community manager what's going to happen and what your plans are, then the community manager has no way of giving that information to the leasing staff. So now the leasing staff's trying to drive the maintenance team to get a unit ready that hasn't been communicated. So communication, just to start with, is the key. Maintenance supervisor and a community manager should be meeting on a regular basis. You could ask any community manager that I ever had as a supervisor, how does things work with Craig? Oh, well, I can tell you real easy how things work with Craig. 9:30 in the morning, coffee in my office. We're going to talk about the day. 4:30 in the afternoon, coffee in my office with Craig, because we're going to talk about how the day went. And in those conversations, we're going to be talking about, okay, we've got these units that are coming available, or these units that are available. The community manager is the person that knows what's hot right now. Is it a 1-bedroom or a 3-bedroom? Where should we be focusing our attention? And those sorts of conversations that you have. Now your community manager can communicate with the leasing staff, and they can let them know when things are going to be ready, why things are working in that way. Then things can move forward in accountability and responsibility. My motto with my managers was always, every day that you don't need to think about maintenance is a good day for me, because that means I'm doing my job. That means I'm walking my units. That means I'm making sure everything's the way it's supposed to be. That means leasing consultants go to show ready units and they don't get surprised and come back to you and complain about how things look. It's a day you don't need to think about maintenance. It's not a day you don't think about it, right? Managers always thinking about it. They are the end of the line, right? Even if you are a co-manager with your property manager. Property manager is the top of the ladder on the chain of command. So they are ultimately responsible for what happens on the property. But if you don't need to think about it, that's good for me. That means I'm getting my job done. When you start having to, or needing to think about what's going on with maintenance every day, wondering if that unit got turned that I told you was going to get turned, well, then we've got a bad day. So that's important to me as a supervisor. I want to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to, and that I'm delivering the product that we said we were going to deliver. And that comes with no surprises, right? If I know we had a problem, we got into a unit and we found fleas. Well, I need to get that back to you right away. Hey, I told you we were going to get this unit ready tomorrow. Not going to happen. Found fleas. Got to get pest control in. Take it off the availability, whatever you got to do. But don't put somebody in there. We're not going to have a happy resident to start with. So back to communication. It's all about communication.
Lots of great comments and suggestions from the audience. I want to start with one from Carlos Perez. What about a property that depends on the supervisor, daily operations that techs are lacking, or understaffed situation? Quality control and holding vendors accountable on expectations you have is tedious work. I know what the solution is, but I would like to know what you guys think of getting to the core of the problem that leads to properties to have those vacant units for months. I guess he's focusing on understaff and overwhelmed staff. So, Tim, I want to pass this question on to you. What's your take?
Everybody's understaffed. Okay. And I promise you, if you told your asset owner that I didn't get these done for 90 days because we were understaffed, they're going to say, don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. So the staffing is a real thing, but we've got to overcome that staffing issue. So we've got to become proactive with the staff that we do have, utilizing the staff that we have and being proactive, forecasting. We should know how many leases we have expiring in the next 120 days. It's on your dashboard. So if you know you have 70 leases expiring in 120 days, and you know 35 of those have not renewed, and even of that 35 that have renewed, how many of those may pull their renewal, you know you're going to have at least 35 make readies to do. What are you doing to prepare for that? Whether you're fully staffed or understaffed, you have to be prepared. Because again, even when you're fully staffed, people get sick. People have personal things come up. People take vacations. That's a real thing. So what are you doing to forecast? Are you doing your pre-walks? Okay. If going back to Craig's communication piece, are you communicating? It can be the make ready board is up to date every day. I love what Craig said about the 9:30 and the 4:30. Okay. You're meeting at 9:30, you're meeting at 4:30. You're updating your make ready board at 4:30 in the afternoon for the next day. Okay. Leasing staff tends to work longer than maintenance. So if something comes in after maintenance is gone, boom, they can go to the make ready board and it's right there. The other thing too is that minimizing the amount of phone calls, texts to the maintenance staff about the make readies. When is this going to be done? Every time we bother a maintenance supervisor or maintenance tech when they're in production, we lose a half an hour of production. Every text message, it's not just one text message, it's 5 or 6. It's not just one phone call, it's 5 or 6. And it also depends on the size of the footprint of your property. If you've got a big footprint of your property, how are you documenting your inspections? Can I go to a shared drive and look at the pictures of the unit and provide you updates on a daily basis? Or do I actually have to physically get in the golf cart or go walk to the unit to find out what the status of that unit is? It comes down to being prepared, and it comes down to being proactive.
Craig, I'm switching to you right now, and technology comes to mind. How do you envision technology as a tool to actually make the process more efficient? And do you think that it's a good idea into looking at technology to eliminate some of the positions? Because I think the biggest play in multifamily right now in operations is that people talk about centralizations and implementing new magic solutions when it comes to technology, but actually the only thing is in mind is to reduce the personnel, because as we know, payroll is one of the highest expenses every company has. Is that right or wrong? It's business, right? If this was my business, I would look how to run my business more efficiently. So I can't really fault any company for trying to run the same number of assets with less people. But how do you see the role of technology playing in a turnkey environment in this part of the business?
Well, I mean, it obviously depends on the technology you're using. There are various pieces of in platforms out there that do things in a multitude of ways. I don't want to be careful. I don't want to make this a sales meeting or anything, but does the platform you use offer you some automation? Are you able to utilize that platform to help you in the scheduling process because you have a routine, you have an SOP that says here's how long it should take, here's the order in which we want to do things. Does that software, does that technology help you to do some of that scheduling? Does that software capable of communicating with the people that are supposed to be doing that work? There's certain pieces of that part of the automation that we can do that will take time off, say, that supervisor's plate, right? Supervisor needs to verify that the automation is working correctly, but no longer maybe do they have to sit down, write it down somewhere, call this guy, make sure this one's okay, call that guy, make sure that's okay. All right, and get all those things. How much time have we saved? And then we start doing that same $250 million addition, right? We say, okay, if we save that supervisor 5 minutes per turn in scheduling, and it was 30 units that he had a schedule for that month times 5 minutes, we saved him 150 minutes. Wait a second, what are you telling me? We got more than 2 hours back somewhere? Hey, that's 2 hours for verifying that the unit was painted right, cleaned right, turned right. Again, back to technology. If we're gathering information about units, where is it stored? If we're using technology that everybody on staff has access to and they can see, and we're using inspections to take photographs and document things, then everybody has access to that, right? This is what it looked like when we did the walk, when they moved out. This is why I'm telling you it's going to take 2 weeks to get ready. Do you see the condition of that carpet? Do you see the cabinets hanging off the walls and the drawers that they dropped, 3 bricks through and, right before they walked out the door? Everybody has the availability to see that. If we're finished with the unit and we're taking photographs of the unit when it's done, leasing staff can go in there and look at pictures and say, okay, yeah, this is going to be good. I can see this is taken care of. Does technology reduce the number of people that need to be on property? Does centralization reduce the number of people that need to be on property? That's going to be a debate for a few years here, I think. I'll be interested to see how it comes out. I tried centralization 20 years ago, and it works in some respects, and sometimes it doesn't. And we're going to find out, because it is right now, it's the great experiment. And there are efficiencies that can be gained through centralization. I never say easier. It's one of the things I really always am trying to be careful. Everybody says, "Oh, we're going to make maintenance guy's life easier." No, you're not. You're never going to make a maintenance guy's life easier. He's a maintenance guy. Am I going to be able to make it more efficient? And when we start talking about centralization, now we start talking about, well, we have teams that are doing things. So now we have a paint team. We have a crew that's going around painting apartments, and we're working with that centralized group of properties where we get the painting done, and we're doing it in-house. Do we have a better quality control because of that? Maybe. We have centralized teams that may be turning units. Are we getting better quality control as a result of that? Is that improving efficiency? And as a result of improving that efficiency, are we reducing the number of days vacant and taking something off of that $250 million?
Tim, I'm going back to you, and I want to ask a technology-related question. If you were to take your X-ray machine and see through the entire make-ready process, what is that you see? What is the current state of make-ready related technology in multifamily, and what are some specific areas that current technology, to your knowledge, don't serve property management well, or they don't serve at all in a process?
Technology is great, but it's all dependent on the person using the technology. Bad data in is bad data out. So if we're solely relying on technology to make us more efficient, we're relying on that person to utilize the technology. So technology is great because you can house all the information and you can have a dashboard and click, this tub needs to be resurfaced and this countertop needs to be replaced and these cabinets are falling off. But if the person misses that, then it's still a miss. So the human element with technology is always going to be a part of it. And utilizing technology pre-walk and utilizing that, so that what are we doing with the technology and the inspections? When we do our 60-day pre-walk, are we able to utilize the technology in multiple facets, where partly we're getting an idea of what the unit needs. Okay, so we know we're going to have to replace the toilet seat. Okay, so we take a picture of the toilet seat, we put it into the resident file, and we charge the resident at that time. Okay, so the technology piece is going full circle, where we're not waiting for the deposit return to get reconciled. We're charging that resident beforehand, so that they're not surprised at the end when they're waiting for their deposit return. So technology, it's really basic. It doesn't have to be very elaborate. It can be just photos and documentation that way for technology. Some of the platforms that I've seen with the dashboards, where you can, the fast food menu of make ready, menus, and you can, paint, carpet, LVT, sink, toilet. That's fantastic. But it's all dependent on who is putting that in. And if we're utilizing, whether it's a supplier or in-house people, the technology doesn't matter if it's not entered in correctly. So technology is one of those tricky things that you have to really pay attention to, and pay attention to the details, much like the make ready. So, being efficient with technology is fantastic, but if you're still missing pieces, it doesn't matter the technology piece. You can go back to back when, I'm dating myself to the 3-part, where you had the white, yellow, and pink sheets, where, it just kept moving down the road, where cleaners got the yellow sheet, maintenance got the pink sheet. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It comes down to the basics.
And now a word from Sean Landsberg, co-founder, AppWork.
Tell me a little bit about data integrity. How does app work rank in data integrity? We all know that what you put in comes out, right? So if the information that you put in is not accurate, is not representing the reality, whatever comes out as data is really not accurate. So how do you fare in data integrity?
It's not just about the information that you put in. The information that comes out is only as good as the information that you put in, but it's also the fact that someone actually has to manually input a lot of that data. So for us, there's two things. Number one is, just about all the data that we're collecting, it happens through the normal course of using our product. Right. So no one's actually going in and manually adding information that we're then using in reporting, analytics, or anything like that. So all the data that we're presenting is actually not done manually. So it takes out just one less thing that people have to do. It makes using the product a lot easier. But it also removes that whole component where people can influence the data. So everything, even take something as simple as, a technician's callback. That's a metric that comes directly from the residents, where there's no way anybody, especially the technician, can influence that. Same thing with the ratings.
German, are we still trying to improve these processes as an industry, or we're giving up and we're starting to outsource? What is the future looking like in your vision, in your opinion, Craig?
Are we still trying to improve the process? Well, Jason, I think, said it. I'm looking at his comment here. Paint, maintenance, clean, same process for 50 years. And it really truly is, right? It's the same thing we've been doing, and we've been doing it forever. I think that centralization as it sits today is going to be a very interesting tool. I think if it's used efficiently and scaled efficiently in companies that have the size and the density in a local area, there are efficiencies that can be gained centralization, and those efficiencies can save money. They can improve the process. I think Tim said it really, really great. The technology is awesome, but it all depends on the user that's using the technology. And when it comes down to it, it still comes back to people that are doing the work being concerned about the quality of the work they're doing, and being held accountable to that work when the day is done. And in a way that's constructive and building as opposed to tearing down. But I think that the process is the process, as the same as always been. I'll be interested to watch the trends as we move through centralization, to see how many organizations and how many companies begin to start to consolidate things, to create specialized teams to do things, and build the efficiencies out in those groups.
I'm going to double down, and I'm going to pull up a comment on the screen right here. Tech has to be easy to use, or it's a total miss. When we have a conversation about it depends on the end user, that tells me right there that there's something wrong with the tech, right? Here's the reason why. You would never hear this conversation when it comes to an Uber app, because it's so simple to use. There's no training videos for it. You just put in hands of any type of person that uses a smartphone, they figure out on their own. If we have to have the conversation about it depends on a user, it means that the product is not good enough. So even a child could play with it. Well, I guess we're going too far now with a child, because probably a 3-year-old does better job than I do when it comes to technology. You just put it in their hands and they're like extremely smart and very intuitive. But I think everybody's getting the point, right? If we're not building the frictionless experience as technology, it doesn't matter how great we think about ourselves and the technology we built. I think this is the solution lays in that. Build it, make it frictionless experience. And also, if you build technology, here's a suggestion. I know that we have some prop tech founders in the audience. Get people that are the end user involved in the process of you building the tech. You can build any type of piece of technology if you don't have the end user involved. Not involved as in like we're asking our clients for feedback. That's not the way you wanted to do it. That's not the way to get ongoing feedback. Hire someone that's been an end user to be part of you building that tech, because nobody knows better than an end user. And my rant is over right now. With that, I'm done.
Can I expand on that real quick, Adrian?
Absolutely, you can. 100%.
One of the problems with tech, we get examples of this, and have issues with tech on a daily basis. Sometimes tech is too broad. Sometimes we get this broad paintbrush of technology, and it doesn't work for every single site. It doesn't work. Some tech works for garden style, some tech works for mid-rise, high-rise. It doesn't work for light tech. It doesn't work for senior housing. So tech has to be malleable to the product and to the site. And sometimes tech is so specific and so restricted that we can't, change the parameters because it's protected. And I understand that. But again, that's why we shy away from tech, and that's why maintenance personnel shy away from tech. If it doesn't make their life easier and they're going to get frustrated, they're going to go back to the 3-part sheet.
I like to stay with you, Tim, because I haven't asked you the question. Are we still fighting the fight of staffing our teams and running a great make-ready game? Giving up and starting to bring outsourcing in? What's the future looking like?
The future is interesting because the centralization buzzword is out there and everybody's looking at different examples of that. But we're still in the people business. We still have geographical restrictions on centralization. I can centralize portions of maintenance. I can't centralize all of maintenance. If we centralize maintenance, who's handling on-call? In Colorado, I can't centralize everything because I have snow removal. Who's going to help me with snow removal if I've centralized everything and I've eliminated positions and just strictly gone out to support? Until the robots come and we can, we're completely eliminating the human element, we're still in the people business. So we still need to train, uplift, and emphasize the people in our industry.
I want to give a shout out to Carlos here. Carlos, shout out to you. Thank you for joining us. What I find really cool about the information shared on this panel is that these are solutions and methods to be an amazing leader. Maintenance is maintenance. Most guys don't understand the difference between being a handyman and a maintenance worker. It's in the title, maintain, preemptive action. The more that a tech and supervisor can think this way, the faster their career growth and performance outputs increase. What you guys speaking of, it's a mindset and life change to integrate. Carlos, if you aren't aware yet, these 3 people that you're seeing on the screen are part of the Facilities Leadership Council. It's a group that we created to have conversations like this for an hour every other week. If you don't know how to join us, shoot any of us or drop a line in a comment, shoot me a direct message. I think that you will find those conversations very interesting. And then we're opening up the conversation, not just director level and VP type of level. If you're site level, I don't know what your position is, but you're more than welcome to join us and be part of even more conversations like this. Thank you for your kind comments. I want to go to what Nick said, and Nick wants to know how can make-ready vendors position themselves as true partners to property staff, streamlining their work rather than threatening job security. I think he's thinking probably like outsourcing type of deal, and that threatens some people's job security. And what else vendors can do to build trust and alignment with the on-site staff? Craig, what's your take?
I think the way that vendors make themselves valuable is providing us a service that's done to a quality level that makes other people want to use them, right? The best thing a vendor can have is word of mouth to get somebody to promote them and say that they're a vendor that should be used. When I worked on site, I never worried about having a job. So, I don't know that I ever felt threatened by a vendor threatening my job security, that someone was going to move me out of my position. There's always going to be a need for maintenance guys. It's again kind of back to what Tim said. It's about relationships and building relationships with teams that get the job done and complete the work in the most efficient manner. And sometimes that's contracting, and sometimes that's in-house, and we just have to build those relationships. When you have the opportunity for centralization and you bring things in-house, how do you keep your vendor from feeling like, well, you're pushing them off to the side? Or when you have things spread out a little bit and you need vendors, how do you keep your site teams from feeling like, well, we're not able to do something? You don't want that to happen. The partnership is about the relationship. It's about clear communication of expectations. It's about those pre-walks being done so that I can talk to my vendor in advance and tell them what to expect when they arrive on the property. Nobody likes to be called in the morning at 8 o'clock and say, "Oh, hey, by the way, somebody moved out. Can you be here in 10 minutes and paint my apartment for me?" Or the painter was here yesterday. Could you get over here and get it cleaned for me? No. Are you doing your pre-walks? Are you doing 30, 60-day pre-walks where you're communicating out with your vendors and that you are going to use? You're building that relationship and those lines of communication are open. The other thing that happens with that is if you're calling your vendor 30 or 45 days out, you're top of the list. The guy that calls on the day that he moved out, oh yeah, I'd love to get over there, but I got 6 guys in front of you with 20 units. Maybe next week. We're back to that $250,000 question again. Or
Tim, what's your take? What can vendors do to be a better partner for the on-site teams?
Two-part answer for this. Number one, if the maintenance teams are worried about their job security, then their job is not secured, because they should know that if they're worried about job security, then they're not doing their job. Okay. And then there's a reason why we're bringing in suppliers to do things, is because we have efficiency issues, or we have loss. So every supplier is already given the trust when they show up on site the first time. Maintain that trust. Do what you say what you do. Don't be afraid to say no. Okay. Don't be afraid to push back when we give you unrealistic expectations, because every supplier I've ever worked with my entire career always has a guy. Oh, I've got a guy. Great. I don't care what kind of guy you got, because the guy that you're going to give me at that moment is going to be somebody that's going to have to come back 3 and 4 times, and it's going to cause our relationship to be strained. So don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to push back when you get unrealistic expectations. Yes, I can get that cleaned, but just so you know, they're not going to be there at 10 a.m. They're going to be there at 3 p.m. Be proactive on that side and being honest with us. And if you can't do it, you can't do it. If you're worried about a relationship because you say no, from my level, I want that supplier to come to me and say, well, so-and-so at this site said we're no longer going to work for them because we couldn't do one job. Give me information. Because then I'm going to push back on my site team and say, they said no because they didn't want to fail. They said no because they know they couldn't get it done. And nobody gets up in the morning and says, you know what, I'm going to really try hard to fail at my job today. So being honest with us, being able to have the pushback when it's constructive, and doing what you're saying what you're going to do. If you're not going to meet a deadline, tell me you're not going to meet a deadline. Don't let me find out about it.
Gentlemen, in a very few minutes that we have left, I want to go over opportunities. What are some opportunities that you see for us as an industry? Like, what is some light that's shining out there? Something that's very bright that maybe most people are missing. Process for the future to make things better for the make-ready process and reduce that number, the score $1 billion of dollars a day question. Craig.
communicate. Have those meetings with your manager. Have those conversations with your teams. Pre-walk your units so that you can schedule in advance. That creates the efficiency. And then create processes that align with your company's expectations, and then let everybody know what you expect from your technicians on site to your contractors that are doing work for you. Let them know exactly what you expect, and then hold people accountable to your expectations. As Carlos said, then we're doing things ahead of time, right? When we turn an apartment the right way, we're reducing the amount of work orders we're going to have to do. And if we look at that as a preemptive, our industry likes to use the word preventive maintenance. I'm single-handedly trying to change that to not call preventive maintenance anymore. We call it scheduled maintenance, and we do things at a scheduled time so that we don't have to do things at a reactive time because they broke. And turn is part of that scheduled maintenance. We are going into a unit to make it ready for the next person, and we're taking a certain number of steps while we're in there that keeps equipment operating at its optimal efficiency and helps us to create not only a good experience for the new tenant moving in, but less work for us after they move in. And those, I think that is the one of the biggest things is the things that we do during the turn process related to scheduled maintenance help us move forward, reduce our work order load, which allows us to do better turns, which takes care of that $250 million a day question.
Anything on the bright side of things for the future, looking into the future?
What we're doing right now, this forum, these conversations. Okay, 10 years ago, these opportunities weren't out there. 10 years ago, there was so much industry animosity, is the best term I can utilize or use right now, against other management companies. I have a great respect for every management company in my market. We all have the same common goal. Now, forums like this are only going to make our industry stronger because we're reducing the animosity and we're sharing information. We're not sharing the secret sauce, but we're sharing information. And information is power. And anytime that we can project out information through an avenues like this, is only going to make our industry stronger, regardless of the staffing issues, regardless of the economics restraints. Information is where we can build the industry up. And that's where we're coming from, as a place of camaraderie and collaboration. Nobody here is, reinventing the wheel. We're just communicating how to build the wheel.
Gentlemen, amazing conversation. Thank you so much for making time. Thank you all in the audience for being here with us today. Everybody, thank you so much for great engagement, amazing questions. I promise that we're gonna make this like at least a monthly event where we're gonna discuss like hot topics of the industry that are affecting operators and you on a supplier side. Take care. See you all next time.